Good morning, everyone. You wanted to hear about the best hookers to start with in NRL Fantasy. Over 600k is going to be this first list, and that's exactly what you're going to get. I've been helping people on here for 5 years now. Isn't that crazy? So shout out to the people that have been here from the jump. And if you are new here, this is what we go through. We're going to go through all of these players with a massive in-depth analysis. There's going to be a bunch of these guys in this section, and we're going to go through the mid-range, and then we will go through the cheapies in another video. We keep them separate. It makes it nice and easy for you guys. The JBFA overall league code is up there in the top of the screen there. If you're on podcasts, 6ZTR67TF is that code. So jump into there. The person that does win that ends up getting into the private group, which all that information is in the description below. We had the 5th overall player last year win our league, and he's in our group now as well. So super cool, that one. But the gun hookers, we're loading it up with Damien Cook, and you will hear from Mitch, you'll hear from Heath, and you'll hear from Scoop as well with their picks, and we'll go through that at the end of this video. But Damien Cook, he comes in at 757. Price reaction, pretty high, given he's moving to the Dragons, and he's going to have to share time with Jacob Little. That's the frustrating one there. So the role reaction is a sad face there. His consistency is a 7. He can have really big games, and there were years where he's a 60+ guy, and he had much better consistency in those years. He got moved around a lot last year, and we're expecting the same here at the Dragons. So my confidence is a 5 that he can replicate that 56.7 average, especially with Little fit and available. He has done this before, so it's a really important factor there to, when you're looking at guns, is can they do it again? More likely than was it just a flash in the pan. The 3-game upside, it's not likely, to be honest with you. The 3-game downside risk is pretty high on that price, and I've got him at a 45 to 50 5-round average expectation, and I don't think you'd regret owning. So that's how we're going to roll through all of our positions. There, guys, is my little synopsis here, and then going through all of these little spots. I think it'll just help you have a little think as to, do I want someone that's a little bit inconsistent? Do I want someone that's a 9 out of 10 consistency? And how confident am I in that pick? And if you are looking for the rankings that I'm going to have all of the hookers in, and my team structure as to how many hookers I'm probably going to have in my side, then you will have to join the private group for that. I'll keep the big in-depth analysis for you guys here for free on YouTube and podcasts, and then just my rankings and different things like that around my side, and my one-on-one advice will be left to that. So Cookie, super consistent with back-to-back 56 average seasons. He eventually gets there for sure, no matter minutes he gets, which was very sporadic last season. I just don't expect the 74.7 minutes at the Dragons with how good Little is, and Cook's another year older. So I'm very much expecting a hybrid hooker/lock role, and approximately that 60 to 65 minutes from him. And we'll see in a second, probably fairly similar for that of Jacob Little. I think they're both too important to leave on the pine for too long. And Cook can have that bit of a roaming 13 role, probably a little bit more than Little has. So I do expect Little to play a little bit more 9 than what Cook will, with Damien being fairly flexible across different positions. So 45 to 50, not ideal. So don't start with Damien Cook. Imagine he comes out and goes nuts. I do expect him to start. It seems like, from all the talk, that Little will end up on the bench to begin and then come on and play the rest of the game with Cook moving around. And if injuries come, then he'll play that bigger minutes, but it won't likely be in the position that you want it to be. Harry Grant, it gets a lot more interesting now. 730k for him, 53.8 was his average last year, and the price reaction for him, it's actually pretty ideal, to be fair, with a great roll reaction. It was a nice smile when I saw the price on that one. I was like, you might want him in your side for sure. The consistency is an 8, season to season, game to game. He just misses a lot of tackles, sadly, and we'll go through that with a few of the guys, to be fair, as we go through it. But the confidence for me is an 8 out of 10 that he does his job and he'll perform like you want him to. He has done this before and better, which is great. Great to see. 3-game upside, the round 2 bye kind of slows down this upside that he has for 3 games. The 3-game downside risk is at 60%, because if he happens to have a 40-odd in round 1 and then the bye in round 2, you probably regret the decision a little bit. But I do think you can potentially regret not owning him, to be honest with you, because he is the best hooker in the game. I think, without Cook, being able to perform at that level. And there's a chance that he exceeds his price point, which is awesome as well. So I do think that he could be a hold all the way through to Origin and potentially the whole way through. In 2022, he ran, I was just trying to work out his stats basically, and across the last 3 years, because in 2022 he averaged 60, in 23 averaged 57.3, and then last year was down at 53.8. So in 22 he ran 20 extra meters on both of 2023 and 2024, which just allows obviously more tackle breaks and the like there, but he had a plus 0.5 try assists compared to what he had last year. So 0.8 to 0.3, in the year-to-year changes. And that got in that 60 average as well. Big thing we do need to look at from 23 to 24 is the net tackles. So he actually made 2.6 more net tackles, which helps him out obviously there, and that's a couple extra points, 2.5 extra points, and 0.3 extra offloads to hand in 23 compared to 2024. So just the reduction of those two alone just dropped him, 3.5 points there, which can be a little bit frustrating for sure, but it does see that if he can just tackle a little bit better, his missed tackles were pretty poor. If he can get that up a little bit, maybe the odd extra offload or two, and try assists just improve a little bit, then he can get back to that sort of 57 to 60 range, which will give him a little bit of value on your starting price, and you know that there's not going to be anything that could happen to his role going forward. So Harry Grant, a terrific option heading into this season. His role doesn't change. His worst season in the last 3 years. So I'm not expecting this pick to go wrong. He's definitely easy enough to hold through the buys if you like. The round 2 buy is annoying, but can easily be covered with other hookers, plus used as a looper in that week. It's a super simple pick with 3 to 5 points of upside that you can hold all year. All aboard if he suits your team, was my call there. Jacob Little is the next fella. 708k for him. Hit 53 average last year and was better for the second half of the year for sure. The early price reaction is high. With Cook in this side, it's a little bit frustrating with that roll reaction. A sad face as well. Let's go through his synopsis first. And Little, sadly, is someone that I don't think we can dive too far into because he doesn't have that hooker role to himself. If he did, or if he does at some point, I see him as a 55 guy. I think you need to wait for the price drop and do come back for that discussion at that time. I'm expecting him and Cook to split the role and play a mixture of middle and 9, as I said, for Cook, with Little taking more than 9 minutes, so probably 55 to 60 minutes. It should still see him get near that 45 to 50 average with the attacking upside for sure. His consistency is pretty strong at 7. I'm about a 6 confidence that he can do this well, and he's only done this before once. So keep an eye on that one compared to Cook. There's not really likely upside there on 3 game, and there's plenty of downside risk. And I think it's unlikely that you could regret owning Little. If he managed to get near 80 minutes, he could be closer to the 56 to 58 range, which would be awesome, but it's unlikely at this point. Maxi Plath, a much more interesting pick than Little or Cook. He averaged 52 last year. He's at 695k, and he has the mid-jewel as well, which is super handy. Price reaction for him, I think, is pretty fair. He played great last year, and there were times where he played off the bench. There were times he played 80 minutes in 13, and the reintroduction of Tom Gilbert back into this side is going to affect him in some way. Is it going to be negative? Unsure. Is it going to be positive? Probably not. Is it going to be neutral? A good chance, I think, in my opinion. So the roll reaction is unsure. Consistency 7, confidence 7. This is the first time he's done it, obviously. But let's get into the weeds here. Plus roll, it is uncertain. Became very clear for a few months last year due to injuries, and is priced accordingly, in my opinion, at 52. Gilbert returning throws the spanner into works, unless we see Gilbert line up a prop, which is a possibility, and Plath at 13. That would be the best route for him to get really good points. He was my favourite trade in last season. Paired with Fuller, bag and a double in that first game in my squad was pretty hectic. So I have a soft spot for Plath, and I know there are people out there pretty interested in him, and I think he can be a really solid pick in round 1. At lock, he did average 51.7 in the 62 minutes with 1 injury-reduced game, and there's going to be some games I'm expecting probably the 50 to 55 minutes, and there will be some near 70. What are the mins going to be in round 1? That's going to be the big question. It's a tough question, and it's why I find it hard to pick him personally at the moment. the DPP is hectic, and if he could get up near 70 minutes, then he's going to be a 56 to 57 average guy, which is 4 to 5 points of value, but that is a stretch, in my opinion. He could also take a couple of hooker minutes, but I think it's unlikely with a Kurt Donahue or someone like that on the bench to cover Jeremy Marshall-King or any position, basically. So Plath is going to be interesting. If Gilbert's a 13, then it's just he's going to be a bench guy and he'll play 40 to 50 minutes, and then when they need him in injuries and stuff, he'll come into play. But at this point, it's probably a no, and I've got a 5-round expectation for him at 48 to 53. So with that 5-round expectation, I'm just going for a 5-point range, which I think could be pretty fair for the guys that I am speaking of. Reed Money, 663k for him, 49.7 average. Actually did better than the year before, which was really, really big. So I think the price reaction is fair, especially at the start of the season. We'll get into that, but a nice role for him. Plays close to 80 minutes week on week, but Reed is the first half of the year specialist. For 3 years running, he's fallen off hard in the back end of the year. I was going to say he's the first 5-round specialist, but he actually held on really well last year until halfway through Origin, to the back end of Origin, to be fair, and then it really fell off a cliff. But be aware that if you jump on him early, it could be decent, but you're likely going to need to sell him at the right time. With the team improving, you did see his average actually jump up 7 points last year, which was super cool. That was his highest average in 3 seasons. It makes you stop and think, is there value here on Reed, given he had an improvement last year, and now can he hold that position, or can he improve even further? It's probably a bit of a stretch to say that he could improve further from here. What's wild though is he actually made 9 more tackles than Harry Grant. I thought this stat was incredible. 9 more tackles than Grant, and only 0.8 more misses per game. So I think Grant was at 3.8 and Reed was at 4.6, but he actually made 9 more tackles. So net tackles, he was so much better than Grant, which I agree. Like, I had Grant from a lot of last year, and he misses a lot of tackles there. So that was pretty frustrating watching Harry do that. But Reed missed 10 first game, and he still scored pretty well, to be fair. But that's what you're getting with Reed, is 4.6 missed tackles a game, and does it obviously improved year to year as the Bulldogs improved, and can that improve again if the Bulldogs take another leap? That's the question with Reed. And if you are a Dogs fan, I can understand you jumping on with him. Go nuts, enjoy it. I do think he's a solid pick to start the season, but he's definitely a scary watch, and there could be other guys that are better, like we've spoken about a few guys ahead, like Grant and the like there, that could do a decent job. And we haven't even got to the player that was the best hooker to begin last season, which is pretty crazy, in Reece Robson. All right, we do move on to Conor Watson. Firstly, guys, make sure you do subscribe, hit the notification bell, subscribe, follow along on podcasts. You're all legends. Thanks so much for doing that, and appreciate you sticking around to this far. Conor Watson, I have put him in here. He isn't currently a hooker in the game. He's just mid only, but I think we have to discuss here because he will be a hooker that you do look at, given he's likely to play there. When I say likely, like a 95% chance that he does play in the 9 position for big minutes in round 1 and going forward there. So Watson needs to be discussed here. If he does, it does look like he's going to get that position. They may move, give him the duel well early, like in the trials, after the trials or something like that. But at worst, we'll get him in that hooking role for round 1. So don't stress about that. But the price reaction for him, it's great. He had moments there where he was one of the best players in the game last year. So that's good news. So very nice role reaction smile, given he's likely to play big minutes at 9. All right, let's get through Watson and my thoughts on him there. But Watson's a points accumulator. When he's on the field, it is as simple as that. With Watto, games over 60 minutes in any position over his career, he averages 48.5, which does include fullback and 5/8 starts, which we don't expect to be helpful for him. So that's basically where he's priced at. 1.2 points under that. But if you look at interchange, it is exact 49.7 in 65.8 minutes when he gets decent minutes there, over 60, as I said. At lock, it's a 61.2, and at hooker, in the limited amount of games that he has played there, across different teams, it's a 57.7 in 75.7 minutes. So PPM wise, he can do it if he's on the park for that long, which we do expect him to be somewhere near the sort of 70 mark there, then it's a pretty easy pick with the dual. If you don't expect him to play 70 minutes and it's like 65 to 70, then that hooker stats there obviously is going to be less than Lock, more around the fact that he doesn't run as much, which we'll go through in a second. But if it is 70 minutes, then that hooker spot is down to like a 54, 55, which is value, but is it an absolute slam dunk? Yeah, that's a question mark. This is obviously over his career as well, guys, and it looked like he really improved as a player last year. So definitely take a look at that one. But do expect a 0.75 ppm floor. At hooker, expect 30 meters less running than what he had at 13. And I do think anything near 70 minutes there and upwards of 68 to 72 kind of range, he is a 55 guy, and he's going to have that dual position, which is great. He misses 2 tackles per game in the middle, so he's just an easy watch on that front, whether it's hooker or lock or whatever. He's going to play limited minutes in Origin, in actual Origin games, if he's the 14, so he could be easily held over that time. They do have 3 buys fairly close together, but starting in round 10, so you get a nice runway there. With him being the main hooker, you can also expect less gains where he's actually the move to the centers guy, which is big because last year he moved a lot just because he is versatile, as you can see with all the different games that he's played, all the way from fullback to hooker and lock. He could be the move to 5/8 guy in a pinch, though, to be honest. I think that is much better, going to be much better for his tackle numbers, defending one more in, for sure. And I doubt they would play a Moriarty type who was hooker in New South Wales Cup last year for big minutes. I just doubt that would happen. So I think it would change things too much in their team, and him moving to, I just don't think they can do it for big minutes. Like maybe, if it's like, oh, okay, he can play a 40, 50 minute stint, not a problem, but hooker is a very important position and you want your main guy in that spot. So I think they'll try and move back rowers or other guys around rather than moving a Watson. But that's just my early thoughts. Could definitely move him, but 6 might be the play. So Watson, very interesting player, and I've got him projected between 50 and 55. I just think the floor is the reason why you pick this guy. I just don't see him going under 50 where he's priced at, and definitely has upside 55 plus, right? 3-game upside 50%, to better on his price. 3-game downside of 30%. Just if he was to get 60 minutes or something like that, you might not, you might average 45 to 48, which could be annoying, but I think that percentage chance is down at 30%. And he hasn't done this before at 9, like for a long period of time. So that's the big worry there, but I do think you could regret not owning him, just like I said with Harry Grant. So yeah, very interesting guy and someone I'm potentially looking at for sure. I haven't done too much with my team so far, and we'll eventually get into a bit of a team structure video with the guys that I'm looking to lock in, and then I'll kind of work around that. And he could be one of those guys I look at. But another guy that we could look at is Reece Robson. 655k for him, average of 49. He was the best hooker last year to start with. It was absolutely incredible, the run that he went on and the consistency that he provided. Some question marks over their team this year, but in the middle there, it's going to be very, very similar. It's more just their point scoring on the edges with like a Val Holmes, going away to the Dragons. But the price tracks for him, it's not bad. It looks pretty solid. That 49 average for him. The role's great. He'll play big minutes again, even though he is moving to the Roosters. Sad. Maybe I just can't pick him based on that he's leaving my team as I'm a Cowboys fan. But consistency and confidence, I think it's 8 and 8 for both of those. I can't see him really going under where he's priced at currently. Did a really, really good job last year, and I expect the same. He actually improved his missed tackles last year, which was, I owned him the year before, and he improved by 1. So he went down to 2.4 per game, which is good viewing as well. He didn't score above 50 from round 18 onwards, so you could look at that as going, wow, he started so well from the beginning of the year. He also did the same from round 17 in 2023. So another similar situation to that of Reed Marnie, where he does fall off in the back end, but at the start, he's a terrific pick. He does have a bye in round 7, which could be frustrating for you, but that is still 6 games before that, and you can decide what you want to do with someone like Robson from there when, as I said, the last 2 years he started really well, and could it be the same this season of him being the best hooker to own to begin round 1? I think he's going to be a point of difference player as well with a very low ownership. As I said, he cleaned up those missed tackles, and can he keep the same if the team isn't expected to be as good? I feel like their defensive line was much cleaner last year, whereas there was a lot of points in their games, but it was so scattered, and he was falling off tackles really easy, especially through the back end. But he first went under 40 in round 23, which is super impressive, and consistency-wise is exactly what you want in a player. If you want it, then Robson is your guy for consistency for sure. Between that sort of 40 and 60 odd, the drop-off is clearly due to Origin and the big workload, which you saw in the year before as well, even without Origin. If you do buy, though, you're holding till Origin, then I think you're jumping off when they have their second buy, and he's in Origin anyway, because he had a 42.75 average the last 8 games, and the first 13 games was 52.7. So a little bit of a jump on value for him by 3.7 points, and the consistency's there, knowing he's going to play the big minutes without a noted 9 in this side to come in and steal some of those minutes. So Robson, I have really high on my rankings as well. I think he'll be a really good selection, and it worked out for a lot of the top 10 players last year, which is the big document that you do receive for joining the private group. So that's the big winner to kick things off. And this is just a quick look at it. We do have Kai here who came in first place, and I go through each of the top 10 guys, and then go through all the way with a selection of teams up through 100 and different trends and things like that. So this was Kai. I actually have a 52-page document here going through all these guys, 9,400 words. So plenty going on there. Just going through their round 1 team, going through and analysing all their trades, their strategies, all that kind of stuff. So if you want to check that out, all the information is in the description. That's the big winning point for the preseason, and then getting help from myself and other cracking coaches. And then we'll get into Scoop's thoughts there on some different players as well. But that's Robson. There you go. So that's everyone over 600k. And as I said, with my gun hooker rankings and my hooker team structure, along with my hooker rankings in general, you'll get that if you're in the private group there. All right, let's move on to Mitch's thoughts. Came 21st last year, so a very, very good player, obviously. And he's only looking at Grant and Watson himself. For Grant, he's got the pro for him is his worst average year since going full-time at Storm hooker. The only way is up for him. And in 2023, he averaged 58.5 in 60-minute games. 2022, he nearly averaged 62. So he sees automatic value by just taking the field. But the con for him is the buy in round 2 is tough. It probably stops him from taking him personally. It's hard to take him, Munster, Howarth, these types of guys, and will play Origin and be managed. So that's his worries for Grant. And then for Watson, his pro is it's perfect to start the year with, in his opinion. Roosters don't have the bye till round 10, and he'll have the duel come round 1. A 55.8 average in the 60-plus minute games, including interchange, 5/8 hooker and lock, all aboard the Watto train. The cons for him is probably makes Origin again and will be hard hold throughout. By that point, Cheese may be back as well. So it could be a good chance to pivot. Also, his flexibility hurt him through 2024, as he was the man to shift to centre if there was an injury. The chances are this doesn't happen, considering they don't have any other 9s for 15 weeks, but we never know. Again, this is what I was thinking of. And we also expect the Roosters not to be as good as they were last year. So thanks so much to Mitch for helping with some thoughts in here. Let me know if you think this is cool to have, if I'm doing the videos myself and you can get their thoughts in written form. All right. Heath, 583rd he came last year, which was a really good effort as well. Beat me at 750th. Dog. But he's got Grant. He actually came through and did his top 5 for all prices. And he's got Grant at number 2 and Watson at number 3 in that top 5. So he actually prefers Grant to Watson. And this would be a cool little thing here. So he thinks that while there's less face value than Watson, the low ownership with the round 2 buy could be really tempting. He can explode to start the year and likely will be top hooker by the end of the year. Could also be a good pod for anyone running double cheapy hooker. Yeah, I think it's a very simple strat with Grant there for sure. Watson, he wasn't as high on him until realizing Brandon Smith still has no set return date or will be late anyway in the mid part of the year. And similar average for hooker versus lock. Yeah, a little bit down on that for sure, but not too different. Roosters hard to lock down this year for how they will perform, and Watson being known as Mr. Fix-It for injuries. Plus the Roosters always seem to have a game with one bench player left by the end at least once a year. Still about 7 to 8 points of value. Yeah, pretty nice. He's got both of them pretty high on his list. And then just finishing things off With Scoop and his thoughts, the Scoop came 120th in 2023. I just beat him. Yes. Go me. But Harry Grant, he's got him, number one here on the list. Overall, it's an 8 out of 10. Really, really good option there for him. In 2024, the average is 53.8, priced at 54.7. So he did get a little bit of a bump, which is frustrating, as he's saying, but he thinks he's estimated to score 57 this year. The pros for him, always a top 2 hooker. Melbourne getting better. He averaged 57 with Munster last year, and in a full strength team, and I'm nearly certain he goes up. So that was a good little thought there, that he scored better when Munster was on the park. The cons for him is not a lot other than price, to be honest, and that Watson may average similar for cheaper. I guess he could go off early a few times if they smash teams, and the round 2 bye is hard to cover if you have Munster as well. Watson, 9 out of 10 for Watson. He strongly recommends, which is good. So his average in 2024 was 49.7. He's estimating him to get to a 56 this year. The pros for him, everyone's gone and he's going to play big minutes at hooker. Historically, he has been gun there. And last year, he was great there. He could outscore Grant for 70k cheaper if things go right, for sure. I suppose, we've got to think of the pros and the cons, which he's doing here. If he gets shuffled around with the injuries, he'll be more inconsistent. He got moved to centre and 5'8" a bit last year as a result. Don't think it will happen as much this year. Another possibility, as he only plays 60 to 65 minutes, to keep him fresh because they need him to stay fit until the troops return. That's a really good call. And was the thing I was slightly worried about if he doesn't get the big minutes. Even so, he probably still wouldn't lose money. The other thing, just to finish off with Watson, that I didn't mention before, is that he could be the guy that, if Mariotti comes on the field, Watson could move to 13 for sort of 10 of Radley minutes if he happened to not play 80 in the centre. They've got a few things that could go on there, and that could improve his stats. 65 at hooker, maybe 10 at lock or something like that, and then go off for 5, if they wanted to play that way. There's a few things that will happen in this hooker gun section. There's probably 3 to 4 guys that I think you could look at in that spot, which is awesome. You would have just seen my 150 players video, all the different guys that could separate you from the pack. If you haven't yet, go back and check that. It's going to give you a full overview of all the guys to look at, so you can make your squad whilst listening and watching my videos and podcasts here as I go through each position. We're going through hooker now. We'll get the mid-range value guys next, and then the cheapies, and we'll go mid all the way down to wing fullback. So it's going to take a few weeks or so to get to wing fullback. So make sure you do check that video out so you can have an idea of all the guys I'm really going to go into in depth. And I hope that this video was super helpful for you, and podcast was super helpful for you in selecting your hooking guns. Hope it was helpful, guys. We'll see you in the next one.